you everyone for joining Breaking Down Racial Barriers Roundtable discussion. First of all, this series is on a national platform with a national audience, and with deep respect, we would like to honor and acknowledge the land we are occupying to have this conversation, which is governed by traditional territory of many nations across Canada, and we are grateful and privileged to have the opportunity to gather here today. My name is Sam Rayner. I am the Industry Development and Membership Coordinator of the Canadian Independent Music Association, aka CIMA, and just to kind of give you a little explanation of who we are. We are a national trade association, and we are here to represent the interest of the Canadian independent industry. And we represent the industry in a handful of ways by advocating to the government for the industry, creating export opportunities, and hosting professional development sessions like these. Our members consists of businesses all across Canada. So we have independent record labels, we have managers, we have publishers, recording studios, and anybody else who kind of lays in the independent world. With professional development, we have webinars related to topics within the music industry. But as a first step on a long road towards establishing equitable and inclusive industry, this series is being designed for everyone, businesses, artists, and music industry associations like CIMA, to listen to and to learn from their lived experiences of Black working professionals within the everyday industry. The development and execution of the 10-part series owes a great deal to the leadership and contribution of Ian and Click, who have picked out the speakers and the topics specifically focused on this, and they worked tirelessly on this programming, and so this would not have happened without them. And we also have to have big thanks for Matthew Baidu for his assistance on the entire series. If anyone wants to check out this, you can register on our Eventbrite page. But if you have difficulty logging in for some reason, the event is live right now on our Facebook wall, which is, you can find us at CIMA Music 75. And we would like to give acknowledge to the funding support of the government of Canada, Factor, and Ontario Creates. Thank you for that. We are also happy to have Advance associated as a supporter for the entire series. And we welcome any other organizations or associations who would like to be a part of these sessions. Really, we're trying to get everyone associated, as many people associated with this as possible, to spread the word, to get as many people watching and viewing this conversation. And we are doing that by dedicating certain episodes to certain organizations. And specifically for this one, we have 4 episode partners, which you might have seen on our poster. We have Canadian Live Music Association. We have the Canadian Music Week, which is AKA CMW. We have the East Coast Music Awards, which is also known as ECMAs. And we have Breakout West. And so once again, if anybody's interested, please reach out to me. We want to get as many people in here listening and participating as much as they can. And I'd like to pass the mic to our president for additional remarks, Stuart Johnston.
Thanks very much, Sam. Hey, everybody. Just want to reiterate some of the things that Sam said. And of course, I want to say that, you know, we're all very proud to work with Ian and Click on this. They are great partners. And I'm sure that I'm honored that CIMA is able to work with him on these extremely important discussions. And I can tell you that CIMA is committed to positive change. And when I say CIMA, that's myself, my team, and most importantly, our board of directors. And we're all intent on making authentic and meaningful changes for the Black community. And we know that there is a lot of work to do on our part, but we are committed to making changes to our governance structure, our committees, our policies, our programs, and even our advocacy. You know, we're intent on creating mentorship opportunities and to recognize and promote success and excellence across the music community, including those underrepresented in the Black community, and of course, in people of color, Indigenous, and the LGBTQ plus communities. You know, Click said it best, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, you know, all people in the music community who become members of CIMA or any organization like ours, they must be able to see themselves reflected in what we do and how we do it. And if they don't, that's a failure on our part. So part of our process, of course, to get where we want to go is listening to the community through outreach, dialogue, and listening. Listening will be the key to our collective success. which is in part what we're trying to do with this 10-part series with Click, Ian, and our friends at Advance and other supporters throughout the music community. And going forward, we know that we're likely going to be making mistakes because we are still learning, but we're counting on you and others to help constructively help us out on our journey. So I just want to say thanks to everybody that's online right now, everybody who's listening. A big thank you to our panelists and to Click and Ian, and of course to our colleagues and supporters at Advance. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion, and that's all you're going to hear from me. Click, it's your turn. Take it away, pal.
Thanks, Stuart. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us again. This is our 4th week, and I'm excited for today's conversation. I'm a 20-plus year music professional. I've worked in pretty much every facet of the industry, currently management and education. These panels, these discussions have all come together from me and myself, good friend Ian here, talking about the lack of communication amongst our communities. And also the need to have us speaking about the issues and what solutions we need to see in our own space. And then bringing people to the table to actually listen and see what we have to say, and then making actionable solutions that we can put in front of these people, meaning organizations and companies that were within the industry, so that they can actually make those changes, and we, pretty much light the fire under their asses. But I'm excited for today's conversation. This is a very important conversation, especially when live music business is pretty much the bread and butter for a lot of the music artists and industry overall, even though we're in a dire situation when it comes to COVID. But I'm excited to hear what our esteemed guests have to say today. So Ian, take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. We were experiencing some technical difficulties, so our apologies for starting a little bit tardy. I am Ian Andre Ebony. I'm the co-presenter and co-creator of Breaking Down Racial Barriers. This is a 10-part panel discussion on anti-Black racism. Anti-Black racism. Say the words with me. In the entertainment community. This is episode 4, Barriers Faced by Black Event Producers. This one is especially pertinent to me myself as a 20-year veteran of the club and concert industry in Toronto. Today we have with us an esteemed panel of guests. I will hand it over to each of you to introduce yourself succinctly. Let's start with Mr. Orin Bristol.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Orin Bristol. I've worked for several venues in the city, usually large ones, over the last 25 years. My current company is Inc. Entertainment, and I'm the Director of Venue Operations.
Perfect. Let's go to Ottawa.
Hi guys, my name is Trevor Mason, and I'm the owner of Ebony and Ivory Lifestyle. I'm an entertainment company that's been putting on events in Ottawa for over 25 years. I'm also one of the co-owners of Carivibe Festival Ottawa, which celebrates Caribbean culture in the nation's capital. And I also currently own a beach restaurant on Peachtree Island here in Ottawa. So I'm happy to be here. Oh yeah, I'm also a DJ. I've been DJing for 32 years. So I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
Let's go to the Harbourfront Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana Webley. 15 years at Harbourfront Center producing festivals, events, and curating. I'm also the festival director at Caribbean Tales International Film Festival that's going to kick off just now, September 9th to October 2nd. And I'm also a part-time professor at Centennial College, teaching arts management to our future producers.
Okay, let's take it to Beni.
Hey, my name is Beni J. I'm a recording artist turned event producer, branding strategist out here in Calgary, Alberta. I've been doing events in Calgary for the past 12 years, everything from showcases on the community side to concerts to award ceremonies on the overall gamut, from everything from music to the diaspora people here. So.
Okay, Miss Polly Perry.
Set to unmute. Thank you very much for inviting me, first of all, to be a part of this discussion. I appreciate it. I'm Polly Perry. I'm the CEO and event director at Polly Perry Events in the Open Mind Group. Also the co-founder of the Afro-Caribbean Vegan Market. I've been a part of Toronto's entertainment community, specifically the Black LGBTQ plus community for over 20 years. And one of the pioneers of creating queer event Black spaces in Toronto. And we co-founded the Afro-Caribbean Vegan Market in 2019 to provide a space for small businesses to market and sell their Afro-Caribbean inspired plant-based products.
Okay. And finally, and I have been reiterating this point throughout the entire series, this revolution will be led by Black women and especially by young Black women. And our final panelist, Ms. Yvette Angela.
Hello, I'm Yvette Angela. I work at Blue Crane Agency right now, but I'm also the co-founder of Unconditional Support, where we produced showcases for some festivals. And on the side, I do anything and everything music. So I double dabble, but right now I'm in live music.
Perfect. And of course, my co-host, Mr. David Cox, who has introduced himself. I am Ian Andre Espene, graphic designer and event producer. This is episode 4, Barriers Faced by Black Event Producers, and we are going to go right in. Today, I'm going to just start with some fluffy stuff. For the panelists, how far along Diversity Road, we're hearing about diversity and inclusion these days a lot, do you feel that the entertainment industry is? Let's go to Ottawa.
I think we're slowly getting there, but there's still a lot of room to grow. By having some people in Ottawa, anyways, there's a lot of people that are in positions that can help us here. I'm not sure about Toronto, but we're growing that way, and we're getting some decision makers in where they need to be. So it's moving slowly, and it needs to be moving a little bit faster.
Okay, Polly.
God, there's so many levels to that. Like, in terms of diversity, I mean, Toronto is huge. It's a really diverse city. I think at the end of the day, and I guess we'll talk about this a little bit more, the diversity is there in terms of the people, in terms of spaces and the entertainment industry. We're getting there. I think we're getting there, but there's still a lot of work to do, keeping it short.
Okay, Orin?
Well, I mean, I think Toronto is incredibly diverse and entertainment is very diverse, but we don't have a lot of diversity in the decision-making and in the ownership, which means that you don't have a lot of diversity in the controls. So I think that is the most important part. There's a lot of people who can do events, who want to do events, but are you going to be able to do those events? And that's where the diversity is lacking.
Okay. Yvette, speaking from the agent space, how do you feel that we're doing in the diversity section of the entertainment industry?
I feel like we've been doing just enough, and then it kind of stops. Like, I feel like this year is finally getting over the just enough. So I feel like it's always been like, yeah, we're doing good, and then it stops there. So we can always say we're doing good and we're getting there, but we just keep getting there. So I feel like it's like, okay, what now? Let's get to the actual solution. So I feel like, yeah, we're getting there, but it's not enough anymore. So it's diverse, but let's do a little bit more.
Diana, working from the Harborfront Center and in these public spaces, how do you feel?
We're slowly getting there, but I feel it's up to us who are already in the spaces to push it to the next level. And I hope that's what we're striving for. In the case for myself, that's exactly what we're trying to do by changing company mandates to ensure that that is our goal. So we're getting there. And I would agree with Yvette that now it's time for solutions. And this year has amplified that for sure.
And finally, let's take it out to Beni.
I think out here we want a diversity of options. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Better? We want a diversity of options. We have a ton of people that come into the city that are looking for options, but we definitely don't have enough people in positions of power or entrepreneurs taking the charge and trying to create some new stuff. So yeah, we're behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways.
Okay. So now that we've gotten the fluffy stuff out of the way, let's get right into it. I want to speak to you guys about, we're talking about anti-Black racism in the event space. I want to talk to you guys about discrimination and anti-Black racism that you have faced as a Black event producer, as an agent or a professional in your unique spaces. This part is just anecdotal so that we can give some examples to those who do not know or understand what it is that we experience as Black event producers, agents, and people in the live music space. Anyone jump in? Polly?
Sure. Gosh, me and my levels. A lot of things I can touch on. I'm just gonna kind of do it a little bit point form. You know, when I approach a venue, you know, I'm clearly visibly Black, and there's that thing. Then when I talk about the LGBTQ2 plus community, they're a little bit more open because everybody wants that gay dollar. It's a thing, you know. You know, they see the community as being safer, you know, even though we play R&B, hip hop, reggae, you know, the typical music that they're afraid of. And I just speak candidly, so forgive me. They will be more accepting when I talk about, you know, I bring to them the fact that it's the queer community. Then I get into explaining exactly what is going to happen because I'm very transparent about the events, who you'll see. I'm all about educating and just being out there. You're going to see people from the trans community. You're going to see studs. You're going to see femmes. You're going to see, I have straight femmes. See, you know, like you're going to see everything. When they hear that there's going to be straight men at these events, gay men at these events, maybe trans, then it changes, right? You know, it's not going to be their idea of this lesbian fun party with hot girls, right? So you have that to face, right? So on top of the anti-Black racism, there is homophobia there. There is that fear of, yes, our Black men, because I do have straight men that come too with their girlfriends or whatever, or just anybody who's open-minded. There's that fear of just everything. You know, when I explain that there's a mixed clientele, then comes on the higher venue costs, the bar guarantees automatically go up. You know, all of a sudden, you know, you have things like the AC gets turned off, you know, so you can drink more, the drinks are watered down, and all of these types of things and systems, they're designated to limit our access. They're designated to limit our potential earnings. You know, prices go up because all of a sudden for me, it's different, right? So the spaces become less accessible. People have to spend more. There's not a lot of free events for us. You know, you can go everywhere in every community, there's free events because of different reasons, but our overhead is so high. And, you know, so those are the experiences that I come across, you know.
Okay.
Quickly, on top of that, I do want to touch on this really, really quick. Church Street, you know, the gay community, the village, I don't do events there. You know, on top of that, there's racism within our community. Those spaces on Church Street are not accessible to us or have not been in the past. Now we have Black owned, we have a space on Church Street that is owned by, partially owned by people of color, a couple spaces, but prior to that, you didn't have access. So I didn't do events there. I never have. Right?
Okay. Trevor, what kind of experiences of anti-Black racism and discrimination as a Black event producer have you seen in Ottawa?
For us, I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that Polly made. We have a lot of the same circumstances down here in Ottawa. I'll speak on the sponsorship. When we're trying to acquire sponsorship from, say, liquor companies, spirit companies, beer companies, it's always your crowd doesn't drink enough. You guys don't drink enough and this and that. And we've been running Carivibe for over 20 years. And instead of coming to see the clientele that's there, yeah, there's a lot of Black people, but there's so many other ethnic backgrounds that are at our festival. The bar is selling out, but they would never come to check and see what we're doing to even see for themselves if they should fund the event. But right off the bat, they'll say, okay, here's a couple cups, here's $700, and then you're on your way. While all these other festivals are getting, you know, large amounts of money. And we've been producing this event for over 20 years, and they haven't even taken the time to come see what it's about. Now, I mean, it'd be nice to get it. We still move on with or without them, but they have to come and check out our spaces and see what it is that we are doing. So that's one of the examples.
Okay. Diana, what kind of anti-Black racism have you seen in the spaces that you move in the public spaces?
For sure. Harborfront produces so many events a year. I have 100 plus for myself. And what I would want to talk about is, you know, access to even backstage. So I produce the event. We hire help throughout the weekend, technicians, lighting directors, audio, etc. But as soon as I enter, and this has happened a couple times, they don't know who the lead producer is. They just know that they're there for a sound check and to, you know, have the band come in. I've been stopped several times asking, what am I doing coming backstage, or who am I? So my experience has always used to be, they didn't value who this Black woman was, didn't care to know her name or her position or status. So that had been an issue in the past. I don't face that today, fortunately, but those used to be the roadblocks for me, is that no one would introduce who I was to the staff that was hired out maybe for the weekend or whatever the case was. So there was no value to me. So that would probably be the number one issue for me.
Okay, Yvette, I know that you toggle between the agency space and the festival space. What kind of anti-Black racism have you experienced personally as a Black event producer and as an agent?
I feel like just not seeing anybody who looks like me. Like, I kind of just went in blindly. I was kind of like, well, I want to do something. So starting to volunteer, I was so lucky. I volunteered with Manifesto. It was like one of the first festivals I volunteered with. And the volunteer lead was a Black woman. And Manifesto has been a great place of having Black people around. But imagine me going from Manifesto to North by. Everybody, I was probably like the only Black person, me and my future business partner as volunteers. So I'm looking around, and obviously we lock eyes because we're the only two Black people, but I've always had to make myself uncomfortable in order to get in. Like, you know, I'm working rock shows. I love rock, but I'm working rock shows, not hip hop shows, and more so just kind of looking for any avenue to kind of see myself in. And then next step was me trying to create my own name and my own show. So that's reaching out with emails as an unknown girl who's just trying to put on a show for hip hop or R&B, and I get replies back, not even like a hi, but more like, we don't do hip hop shows. I'm like, oh, okay. Or we're gonna charge you this, that, and the third. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So this is when I'm first not really like experienced. So I kind of just felt helpless. I kind of just gave up on that before joining other people and having names attached to my name in order to seem valuable, which was really discouraging because I'm kind of like, why can't my work just be valuable? Why do I have to be attached to this, that, and the third?
Or be ushered in. Okay, yeah, Beni, exactly. I'm going to keep everybody so concise so that we can stay on topic today as much as possible and try and get to the solutions. Beni, what can you say on this before we get into the meat?
I think my biggest one is just them trying to control my audiences. You know, what kind of people are going to be there? You know, how is that room going to look in regards to how dark the room gets? And that's actually in verbatim quotes. How dark will that room be? So for us, it's definitely about trying to dictate what our audience looks like, even though everybody loves hip hop and R&B, but you don't want to think that it's associated with the color based on how violent it's going to get. So.
Okay, and we're going to take it to the event space and venues, the clubs and concerts. Orin, I'm going to ask you a direct question. You know, what are the kind of systemic exclusions that you see in event spaces, not only in the ones that you work in, but just in your experience going back as far as System Soundbar and Circa, et cetera?
Well, listen, I mean, I started in the business as a doorman, and I was fully aware that when I was moved from my position inside, watching a door, to outside, that part of that was an attempt to manage the crowd as they showed up. You get put into a position of, there's good Black people and bad Black people. And for you're the guy who has to make that decision and tell them. And I'll tell you, it's a hard position to be in because, as Yvette said, you're often the person where you're the only person. You're that guy. You're the person that's there. And now you have people that you work with and customers coming who decide that, you know, you're Mr. Uncle Tom, or you're the wrong guy, and this is what you're doing. And it's a tough position. But the reality is that there are good and bad people of every hue and color. And although you start in that position, as you work forward and you go forward, you can do different things. And what my opportunity became was to move forward and to make sure that people could get into the club, people could get into those venues that might not have gotten into those venues. And eventually, as you go forward, you hopefully move up, which I did, and you have the power to allow access to more people into those spaces. And that's what it's been, and that's what it's become. I mean, at this point in time, I understand a lot of what the event producers are saying, because I know, and when I work for people, that mentality of no hip hop, you know, no black crowds, no urban music, urban is the code word that they'll use over and over again, that happens all the time. But what has happened is that by being that guy that was at the front door at that club I was working at, I've gotten to the point where I can have access for people who look like me and who look like others who might not necessarily have been in those venues, to have access to those venues.
Yeah.
The important thing is when the time comes to have access to those venues, and the important and the unfortunate thing is that many producers, many event producers, because they haven't had access to many venues, don't know how to do things the way that they need to do things. Because in the end, if this is your first time or your second time throwing an event and nobody's giving you an opportunity, there's some learnings that you haven't gotten because you haven't had a chance to work at a small venue. And now you approach a big venue and you don't know some of the things that you need to know. And I think that is the bigger issue. I mean, I heard what, you know, Trevor said or Beni said about, you know, your crowd not drinking enough. It's a fallacy. You know, the crowd drinks enough. The crowd drinks absolutely what it's supposed to drink. It's not an issue. But if you come to the table and you don't understand what you're bringing to that table because you're not experienced, because you don't know the numbers, because you don't understand certain aspects of this business, unfortunately, you'll be taken advantage of.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems.
Yep.
You know.
So, sorry, I don't mean to cut you.
Go ahead.
So everyone here on this panel has like spoken about feeling unwelcome in establishments. It's a well-known, it's not a secret. There's lots of conversation about King West. Beni and Trevor have talked about unequitable bar guarantees, and Yvette, room rates and these kind of things. And just to throw back to Orin, what do you think, so overall in this series, we have talked about representation. What do you think that the solution in terms of, you know, the number of managers or owners or decision makers, and how could that change this narrative?
Stop giving people your money who don't respect you. And it is the hardest thing to do, but it's as simple as that. Stop giving people your money who don't respect you. And so what happens is that you mention, whether it's King West, Queen West, whether it's whatever it may be, you go to a place and they'll say no to you 9 times out of 10, but then Caravana weekend, they're going to be okay with you. If I say no to you in February and I say no to you in March, if I'll say no to you in the middle of December, why do you want to bring your money to me when I need you? And that's unfortunately what it is. We're so happy to go to a place that'll say no to you 9 out of 10 times on that week that we can go to them, and you give them your money. And it's also the same thing. You're talking about liquor companies. You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know,
I'm going to cut you there because we're going to go to an entire section on sponsorship a little bit later on. Di, what kind of systemic and and all of you, we're kind of systemic. Like, we've heard talks about the LCBO limiting, not the LCBO, the ACGO limiting licenses based on the type of music. What kind of restrictions have you come across in your travels with club owners, or like things that are systemic, where they're like, these are like, you know, myself and Trevor have had conversations about counting of audience, you know, the number, like things that are intentionally used to keep Black people out of venues and event spaces?
I would probably say the dollars that you're coming with, the sponsors that you're coming with, what weight are you carrying? What's your history, your track record? I think all of those things don't necessarily, like, you can't even come to the table unless you check off those boxes. And that to me is probably the saddest thing. And you know this, Ian, just even trying to partner with us, is that you've gone through that and you've overcome that. But those are probably the biggest barriers for us, is that you need to come with a prerequisite. Mm-hmm. And really it should start as a conversation, turn into a mentorship partnership, and then listen to the ideas. What do you want to put out there, and actually work with you to make it happen. Okay.
And how do we go about, filling these, these gaps in terms of the managers and even the people that work in the industry, the Black sound techs and the lighting techs and the stage designers and all of these people in these spaces?
That's a tough one, just because it's always been the old man's game for a long time. I think the history of Harbourfront has actually changed that, but we need to start being mentors for the people who already occupy the space and get people in. One of the main reasons why I started teaching at Centennial was to recruit and to get people who always ask, how did you end up in Harbourfront? How are you an event producer? Where does that start from? If you have no idea, we need to take all of these young people who either aspire to produce, to be engineers, take them out of the churches. There are so many sound techs that are available to us that are afraid or don't have the know-how to get into the industry. And, with my family history, I thought I was going to be an audio sound tech by starting to DJ from a young age, but my love of events and producing won that over. So who is going to be, the next agents of change to bring in that level that we're looking for? And I think that's a hard question to answer, but it starts with the people in the space. And I would probably hold myself accountable as to being one of those people who need to start.
Okay. And I'm going to jump to Yvette for a second, because as you speak of the people who are in the spaces, Yvette told me a story about allyship. And I'm going to repeat what I've repeated every single episode for this entire series, which is, you don't call yourself an ally. We will tell you when you are an ally, because an ally advocates, an ally stands next to and in front. In the festival space, Yvette, like those gatekeepers and those people, you talked about North by advocacy and mentorship and ushering. How has that played a role, and what do you think that could do in terms of changing this narrative?
I feel like I've been blessed to meet the people that I've met and them being allies, because I think I automatically was kind of like, I'm gonna work and put my head down and just work and just do what I'm told, and I think it made me just have this work ethic where it got noticed. But not everyone is like me, where they're gonna be like, okay, let me just work really hard and stay really late in order to get noticed and go to the next level. So I became a volunteer lead, and that was the first time where I was kind of like emphasizing how important mentorship is, and not only by other Black people, but like as a white ally, you can still be a mentor to an upcoming Black female or male or something like that. You can still be an ally and be a mentor. So I feel like I would name like a white man as one of my mentors. He's part of Manifesto, and to this day, I can hit him up and be like, hey, I need this, that, and the third. And he'll be like, got you. And I feel like we need more people like that who aren't afraid to not be a white savior, because they get it confused. They'll be like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this and that for you, and then they're gonna put their name on it. No, I think what we need more so in this is, I'm gonna help you, and then I'm gonna step aside and let you do the work and show what you can do. but I'm here if you need me. Not just I'm gonna put my name on this and then leave, look what I did. So I feel like there's two differences on that one. And I'm so blessed to be in the presence of the one where they're always gonna help me and they're my friends to this day. And we just need more than that. Like we need more and more and more of that.
Okay. Trevor, Beni, you guys have also operated in the festival space. Like what barriers have you faced in, and we're going to speak, as I said, about the sponsorship space, but what barriers have you faced and how has advocacy assisted in your progress, and what suggestions do you see, needed in those areas?
Similar to Yvette, I just put my head down for the past 30 years and just kept working. So as far as getting venues and getting festivals off the ground, I was lucky enough to be noticed on radio stations and our city councilors and our mayors. So when it came time for me to go to them, they already knew what I was about. It was a successful track record, so they allowed me in, and they do support. Like, they are my allies, and they're white. And, our councilor, our mayor, me regularly to see how the festival is doing. But further than that, now that I'm in, I have to do my part. Others behind me to get in to have the same opportunities that I have. So, I mean, like Yvette said, not all your allies are going to be Black. And if you find some white people that are willing to help you, you take their help and you allow other people to come in behind you. But once you get in, you do have to help the people behind you for it to continue, or it'll fail. So that's all I have to say about
Beni?
it.
Yeah, similar to Trevor, man, it's about that track record, that credibility, that merit, the work you've been putting in over all the years, so that when it's finally time to find the person who's doing hip hop or R&B, they know who to reach out to. And in my space in particular, I do have, other people of color who have been doing, event promotion and concert promotion for a very long time. So in partnering with them, we now have access and more power by coming together to have and affect a lot of change and how things are viewed from our standpoint of things. Hip hop is kind of in now when you're talking about EDM, rock, and everything from before. So everyone is looking to hip hop to see like, oh, what's going on? How can I access your market? And they know who to look to because of the work that we've been putting in and us teaming up together.
So you have been successful in garnering the attention based on the work that you've done. However, and as I've said in numerous episodes, there's these boxes that get checked, and often the people and the powers that be only know that one person, and they're like, let me give that money to that Black person, et cetera, et cetera. So, we are sponsored by CMW. They are watching. Yvette has mentioned North by these spaces, and these are the more progressive spaces. But there is an understanding in the industry that the industry likes Black music, but does not like Black people. And so my question is, how is it that you guys see, like in your utopian world, what would your involvement be, and what is it that you want to say to CMW and the North by Northeast, as well as the ones who are not as receptive in terms of getting us into these spaces?
I think there needs to be a proactive approach of diversifying those boards. Those people that make those decisions, there has to be proactive. Like if you're putting out a call or an application for someone to join your team and you recognize that there isn't people that look like Black people on your team, you have to proactively get into those spaces and do the work to find the people who have been doing the work. Because if it's not on your Facebook, it's not on your Instagram, if it's not on your Twitter, if you don't see it right away, do the work, ask people in the community who's been doing the work, and then interview those people, have a conversation and start finding out what's been going on. But I think a lot of people just be like, okay, well, who's the top guy on my quickest Google search? Well, that guy's been doing whatever, don't know his backstory or her backstory, and for whatever reason, maybe they're no longer doing stuff with the community and they're not just doing their own due diligence. So it is about finding out what's going on with the community, assessing it in that way, asking questions, and proactively doing that work.
Yvette, how do you feel that the outreach in these organizations is? Do Black people know about these organizations? Do we feel welcome there? What do you think, and why?
I don't think, which organizations, like
any festival organizations, large.
They know about them, they just don't know how to get in them. And I feel like the organizers up there, for the lack of better words, I feel like sometimes it's a little lazy. So they kind of just choose the one Black person they know, and then it's the same Black person. And I love us all, I want us everywhere, but it's turns into tokenism, right? So then you're just choosing the same Black person over and over again, and then maybe their friend to add on, and then it's just lazy because you can put in the work, and if you can't put in the work, hire somebody who wants to put in the work.
Yeah,
So you can put in the work to switch up the tradition, because the tradition right now is, okay, well, we're gonna do the same program again. Oh, we need 1 or 2 hip hop. Let's choose that person who did it last year. Okay, and put it to the side. No, like you need more than 1 or 2 hip hop panels. You need more than 1 or 2 hip hop showcases. And if you can't do it, somebody else can do it. So I feel like it's just actively putting in that work. And if you're not interested, that's okay. Somebody else can do it. But I feel like it's just being that one person, if you're an ally who's white, just to be like, hey, maybe we could reach out to this person, or I can't do this, but that person can do it. So actively making more, expanding, like
perfect.
Not enough, really.
I'd like to throw the click. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think one of the most important things I've viewed just from being a manager and going to different festivals around the world in different spaces is I don't always see us working on the other side of the fence. and I think what you're talking about is having actual representation. And if you're a festival, if you're an organization, if you're a company that wants to be in the space, well, it's not even once. At this point in time, pretty much Black music is the most popular music. Like, you are going to be entwined into this genre, no matter which way you look at it. And it doesn't even matter if you're not even in the certain genres. I mean, there's Black people that are doing country, there's Black people doing rock and roll, there's Black people doing all types of stuff. So at the end of the day, I think it's important that there's representation within these spaces that can actually put the agenda forward in regards to, like, this is what needs to be done and this is what we would like to see. But you can't just put somebody there to hear them out. You have to actually give somebody power to actually encourage them to actually move forward. Otherwise, it's just tokenism.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to actually just correct something that my partner said. Not at this point in time, at every point in time, and all of those musics that you're talking about are Black music. Rock is Black music. these distinctions that are being made that segregate us from ourselves are very, very important. And I want to point out to organizations like the CMWs and the North Bys who are more receptive, but as well as the ones who are not, that there is an entire gamut of Black music, which includes Afro beats and reggae music and soca music, and an entire gamut of music that is discovered, not in the Christopher, not the only Wallace, the other guy, the other Christopher Columbus kind of sense of the word, but there is an entire gamut of music. So look for those people who are, and if you don't know where they are, that's fine. That is not racism, but it is ignorance to not find the person who knows where they are to find them. Okay, we're gonna move on. I want to take a few seconds to move into the booking agency space, and I want to ask all of you guys a question actually before I go there. Each one of you works in a unique space. Polly works in the LGBTQ community. Ottawa is Trevor, and he moves in a Caribbean space. Beni is out west. Yvette is moving in a festival space, Harborfront, and of course, Orin in the clubs and nightclubs. How many people do you see that do exactly what you do in the space that you work in?
How many people of color did you mean to say?
Black people. And I'm going to be clear when I use the term Black people, because I think that the BIPOC conversation is distracting from the conversation that we're having right now. We have a very distinct problem in the Black community that needs to be addressed, and so it is important for Indigenous, it is important for everyone else, people of color, but we are having a conversation specifically about Black people. How many Black agents do you see? How many Black event producers do you see? Orin, how many operations managers, management, Polly, Trevor, Beni?
Not very many. Not very many at all. There's a lot, I guess. There's a representation of Black event producers, promoters, things like that. But when I get into the venue, when I get into the space, how many people do I see like me? Not very many at all.
Orin?
I mean, In my own space, I see several because I've hired them, but other than that, no, there's not very many, not in this city, not in many cities.
Diana?
Within our department?
Just in your travels. One. Okay. Yvette? Agents?
Unless, oh, zero. But unless it's like an event that's specially for like a Black event, like Afrofest, there's none. There's like none. I'm always the only one.
Trevor? Yeah, unmute Trevor. Okay, I'm gonna throw to Beni until Trevor unmutes. Go, Beni.
Here, hello?
Yeah, you can go, Trevor. You can go quick.
I'm saying there's a lot of event producers and promoters in the city, but as far as event owners go, like myself, there's a handful, maybe 5 I can count.
Okay, and finally, Beni.
Similar to Trevor, you know, when you're talking about the grassroots, like, you know, the local DJ who wants to throw a quick jam or a bashment, you know, there's like, you know, about a dozen of those people just doing small parties for themselves, and, you know, 50 people, 100 people over here. And when you're talking about middle management or nightclubs, there literally is only one other person in that regard. And then when you go into like the festival space, the concert space, there might be 1 or 2 if you talk about all the genres and the festivals and like the legacy festivals. So like the Caribbean festivals and African festivals and stuff, only in that respect. But then when you compare that to everything else, the 1 person, 2 people, less than 5, less than a dozen in the whole province of Alberta. So.
Okay, so there's a lack of representation. How do you specifically, what would you like to see? Obviously, it's more people, Black people in these spaces. How do you see that number increasing? Orin has said that he has personally hired them. What do you think needs to be done by these organizations, by these companies, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, but I want to hear it out loud so that everybody can hear it.
I think like, you know, like Lauren said, is hiring them when you get to that space. Like I know for myself, when I do events and stuff, not because I'm catering to the Black queer community, but I hire a lot of, I don't want to say people of color because you told said to strike that, Black. I think very much as well, like Diana said, is getting to the point where you're teaching, you're mentoring, you're providing spaces where they can learn how to learn the skills necessary to get to that point. Because also, like Beni said, there's a lot of people that, and no shade, nothing like that, everybody is doing different things, you know. But there are a lot of people that are doing the one-hit wonders or the quick parties. A lot of people don't consider it a career, and it is not a business, right? They're just doing the thing and they want to make a quick money or whatever, and that's fine. But for those individuals that want to grow this into a career and get to the next level, I think that we have to create the spaces, create the jobs, create the opportunities for learning as well. You know, when I first came to Toronto, I wanted to go to Trevor. I couldn't afford it. You know, making things accessible, letting people know that there are different ways to get up there, because everybody that I know that, well, a few people that I know that are in certain positions, they've grown into it. And it's been experiences from working with festivals, working with entertainers and things like that. So I think that's what we need to do. Education, mentoring, making sure you hire, you know, making sure you foster those relationships and open doors for people when you have the door open for you, or when you open.
Trevor. Okay. Orin, I'm going to ask you a question, a direct question. There is, you know, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, there's always this conversation that comes up about hiring people just for the sake of hiring them, as opposed to hiring the best. How do you overcome that kind of conversation in a large organization?
Well, I'll tell you, when my first general manager position was at System Soundbar. I had just moved from Limelight, and that's where me and Click messed. And I remember doing interviews, and I called the gentleman who's my mentor, who's an old Russian Jewish guy, and I said, I'm having a problem. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, we're opening this electronic club, and, you know, I'm interviewing people, and most of the good applicants I have are Black. And, it's not going to represent the demographics of the club. I said, I think if I hired the people I should hire, will probably be 40% Black staff. And he said, Orin, hire the best people for the job. And because of that, man, that is how I have run my business and the businesses I've been in charge of since then. So what it is that I won't hire anybody just because they're Black. Mm-hmm. But when I do hire people, especially if they're Black, I demand excellence. And the reason I demand excellence is that my mother told me, your mother's told you, mm-hmm. you have to be better, because you're going to be the one who's opening the door for the person coming behind you. And so I insist on excellence. And that is how I've been able to hire who I've been able to hire. I mean, I believe, I'm pretty certain, entertainment-wise, nightclub in Toronto, our organization probably hires more young Black people than anybody else in the city. And it's not because they're Black, it's because they're better. It's as simple as that. They have to be. And
I've once heard you say, do you know how good you have to be a Black bartender on Sky Bar? Or do you know how good you have to be, every single person, and I was just saying this for the audience outside of us, every single person in every one of these tiles on here, our parents have told us, in order to get half as far, you have to be twice as good. Has anyone not heard that? Right? So, it's a prerequisite, and I understand Orin's point. Diana, I have a question for you. Working in these kind of organizations, do you find that as a Black person, you have to make a decision between personal advancement and sticking around, like Orin, who hires people for the community?
Yes, I did not plan to be a lifer. I really would not like to be a lifer. My goal is to pass the torch. And so I don't want to call it sacrifice, but I've done my due diligence. I'm ready to pass on what I know to someone else for them to run with. And that hasn't happened yet. And that is one of the reasons why I'm still where I am, is because I don't have a legacy to pass on to anyone. And part of what we're doing now is hiring guest curators and giving other people opportunities to shine, to get them in the door to showcase their work. So the goal for me was never to stay there for 15 years, but because of my previous mentors at Harborfront, like the Dalton Higgins, the Alok Sharmas, they inspired me to continue doing what I'm doing. But right now the issue is, who do I pass that on to? So yeah, for sure, sacrifice is huge.
Okay. So I'm going to ask.
I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt for one moment. You said that about me hiring for the community, and I don't want to take away from the people that I've hired. I don't hire from the community at all. I hire the best people for my business. And I think the difference is that many times in the past, young Black people have been overlooked and have not been given a chance. And what I do is I hire the best people. So if there's 4 people sitting in front of me and one of them happened to be Black, I'm going to hire that person if they're the best in the group. If that best person happens to be Asian or white or Indian, then they'll get hired. I think the problem that has happened up till now is that other people have done that same interview and had those 4 people in front of them, and the best person happened to be Black, but they chose to hire somebody else anyway.
Yep. Okay. And so you're speaking of hiring the best person, and this conversation we're having is taking place at a very high level, and we've been talking about systemics. How do you bake in diversity into a job description so that it ensures that you have and this is a question for anybody, that you have a diverse set of applicants in the first place? I know that personally, that in some of these clubs and organizations, I haven't felt as though I would belong. Right? How do you bake this into the description of the job and ensure and proactively source candidates from like there's good people in every community, but from underrepresented communities like the Black community.
I mean, I don't personally believe that you have to put that in a job listing. I think that part of it is that young Black people don't know that they can apply for those jobs, or they assume they're just not going to get it, so they don't bother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that that's a large part of it. I don't think that you need to have a situation where in the job posting, we talk about diversity. I personally, and it's a personal thing, I know it works for some people, I don't actually like that, because I don't want anybody to tell me I got the job because of the color of my skin.
Yep.
I just don't want to be excluded because of the color of my skin. I just want to be on even footing. But I think that that is a pipe dream until you have people who have an opportunity to be in power, who understand those things. When you have somebody like Diana or somebody like Yvette in a position where they've had to come and work towards something, you have somebody like Polly or Beni who have come and had to work their way through. When you put those people in positions of power, those people understand. There's no way that Beni is going to hire somebody just because of the color of his skin after it's taken him so long to get where he needs to get. He's going to make sure that he hires the best people. And that's how I think it works.
Sorry, I'm going to go to Diana quickly, and then I think everybody wants to speak. Diana?
Yeah, I just want to also say that the people who don't make it past the hiring process shouldn't be forgotten. Those are the people that I'm worried about. Those are the people that I want to pick up and let them know this is the work that it takes to get to where you would, be to get hired. I just wanted to mention that's who I'm looking out for as well.
Okay. Yvette?
I just wanted to say, like, trust is huge, because if I wasn't trusted with certain tasks or challenges, I would have never, ever excelled, and I would have given up a long, long time ago. And what he was saying about we have to work 10 times harder, which is crazy, and we're like almost killing ourselves, and we see our counterparts who don't do anything in the same role, and they're excelling to the next level, and you're like, what? So I feel like just if it's beyond just hiring, but challenging that person that you hired, giving them more chances and letting them expand, because
opportunity. Yeah,
and there's so much people, like they said, the people who don't get hired, they still message me and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And it's so hard for me to tell them keep going, because it's like, it's helpless sometimes, because they're not even giving them a chance or even being challenged with tasks in order to expand their experience. Like if I wasn't working in a festival in the rain, trying to like wrangle a crowd of people, I would not be where I am. And that's only because I was challenged and given a chance and trusted. Like, trust the Black person, not because they're Black, because they just want to work.
Because they're excellent. Okay, Beni.
Part of actually what I do of my organization is I actually put diversity as one of our main points, because what we represent over here is counterculture. When you think of Calgary, you think of Alberta, you think of, rednecks and people that are very, closed-minded, cowboys, that kind of stuff. So I actually make it a point to have a lot of representation. I like to make sure that I have Asians on my team, that I have people of color on my team, that I have Black people on my team. And I don't put people in positions that aren't skilled enough or that aren't aspiring for excellence. I put in myself that I'm going to train them and put them to a level that they want to get to anyways, but I make it a point to make sure that my team represents different people that I don't represent, so that I have a wider gamut of what's going on in my community. When you talk about hip hop, the Black community is so small, so I want to make sure that I have Filipinos on my team, that I have Indigenous people on my team, that I have Black people that are Nigerian, that are Caribbean, that are from the States, that are from Toronto on my team, so that we can have the different representations. So that is a point that I take as an organization runner, to make sure that I am proactively being diverse.
Okay, I'm gonna throw to Polly, and then we're gonna start to talk about sponsorship.
So just a quick thing, you talked about how to.
Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Trevor. Yes. Sorry, we can hear you, Trevor. Polly, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You talked about, how do we ensure that we get these people in these spaces and the applicants, and Orin said, everyone made a great point, but, Orin said I've been on hiring committees. I have a career. I work in the automotive industry, and I've sat in that room where I'm hiring people. Level number one, if you address comes in and it says a particular address or a particular type of name, sometimes your resume doesn't even get looked at. So putting your hand up and saying, hey, that's not right. Me being the Black person in the room, if there's a South Asian name and I realize that they want to talk about it and they want to skip it because they feel like this person won't have a command of the English language, as a Black person, I'm putting my hand up and saying no. Because if I wasn't in that room and the name looked Black, I've been lucky in my career that, you know, my name is not typically a Black name. And I've always had a good
stereotypically a Black name.
Right? Stereotypically. I've always had a good address. So by the time I get to, and I've always had the skills and been exceptional. So by the time I get to the interview, they're looking and they're saying, oh, you're Polly? So you've worked in Korea? Oh, yes, it's me, you know. Yeah, I get that. Right? You speak French? So you were the person on the phone? Yes. But I want to talk about that quickly. The other thing is, and I wrote down my point, names, address, hiring.
Okay. All right, we're gonna.
Ensuring that you have that variety is really important, and going out, that's my point. There are huge organizations, and you can do this in your organization. There are organizations that go out specifically into these different communities to make sure that when there is a job posting, that they receive a variety of applicants. And now that we have this movement going on where we are making larger organizations accountable, how we go back and make sure that they're accountable is, what are you doing to get those people in here?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I think that's what I was kind of alluding to with Orin. He said that you said, Orin, that you don't specifically believe that diversity needs to be addressed in the job description. However, the question, and this is a question that we have encountered straight through this thing, is if you advertise in a certain place and only certain people read that newspaper, that blog, that whatever, are you doing enough? And if not, can you say, and this is not pointed at you, Orin, this is a question generally, can you say that you are doing your part in ensuring the diversity that you say that you are ensuring when you put up your black square or when you do these performative actions, right? So that was the question I wanted to ask there, but I want to move into the sponsorship space, which is a little bit of a thing that has eluded Black event producers and promoters, and every one of you, Trevor, every one of you has attempted to get sponsorship. You started speaking about it. What have your experiences been with the sponsorship space as a Black professional? And plain talk, bad manners, do you think that the space is racist?
Well,
unmute, Trevor. Sorry. Unmute. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the space is racist. I mean, we've encountered a lot of problems getting access to funding. I mean, lucky enough for us, we were able to find a grant writer, but it wasn't until, Carivibe has been going on for almost 20 years. It took me 10 years to know that we could even get sponsorship from the government. I didn't have the access to it. I didn't know how to get funding. So I think resources need to be out there so we can let other people know that there is government funding for certain things that we do. We've been successful with government funding, but in the corporate space, it's been poor. We haven't got very much from that space at all. So I think it is due to the color of our skin, to be honest with you.
Okay. Orin, you work in this space a lot. I'm going to speak quickly on the alcohol companies. What is your experience with the alcohol companies and the way that they treat Black event producers versus our white counterparts, if any?
So I know there's a perception that white promoters are getting a lot of money, and I don't think that that's actually the truth. Liquor companies have a ton of money. So there are two types of promoters. I think Paulie mentioned it earlier. There's people who do one-offs, and it'll be difficult for you to get anything for your one-off part of your event. And then there's people who have festivals, companies, lifestyle brands, and those are more likely to get any or see any sort of sponsorship. The important thing is that, first thing you have to know is most liquor brands sit down and look at their budgets in January, February, and they laid out that budget for the rest of the year. So if you want to call somebody in June and say, hey, I'm looking for sponsorship, it's not going to work. You have to do it properly. And because you don't know how to do it and nobody's explained it to you, it becomes more difficult. So if you're looking for sponsorship for next summer's event, you need to write the proposal now. Now you have to also tell them why their brand would benefit from being aligned with yours. So if any of you, for instance, decided to come and throw an event at one of my venues, it makes no difference to Bacardi or to Hennessy if you say you want sponsorship. They're already my partners. They're already in the venue. What you have to learn is what you can do. So what you can do is say, hey, Bacardi, would you like to sponsor me with your product? And Bacardi says no, then you can come to me and say, Orin, I would like you to exclude Bacardi from what you're offering. And I'll do that for you. That's what you have to do. You have to understand how powerful your dollars are. Nobody's going to give you money if you're not affecting their dollars. So if you have gone to a specific brand and you've said to that brand, my crowd drinks your product, my crowd comes here, I put it on, and the crowd says great, but you say, they say they don't want to give you any money, and then you still allow that product to be sold at your event. I don't care if you don't want brand A. If I have brand B, I'm going to sell something else. It's not a big deal. But now what you do, you're doing 4 or 5 events a year. You're doing 10 events a year. And at all your events, you're excluding one particular product. 2 things happen. You're teaching your crowd to drink something else. You're teaching their crowd to drink their competitor. And if brand A is not giving you money, even if brand B is not giving you money at this point, you just keep on saying brand B, look, in the last year, I've done 10 events and I've done 1,000 people per event. And from the companies, the clubs, the venues that I booked, they've said I've sold this much of your event. Can you, or are you willing to sponsor me? No? Okay, listen, I don't want brand B at my events anymore. I'm gonna go to brand C. You cannot be afraid to know the power of your dollars. But if you don't have power of your dollars, what do I care? If you're gonna drink my product anyway, what do I care? Why should I give you anything?
So my question would be, in this space, data collection, access to the power of the black dollar in the community and our ability to know these numbers, right? So you're talking about alcohol companies. My understanding, my personal understanding, is that alcohol companies have 2 budgets. They have budgets that they deal with venues with, and they have marketing budgets. Many a time, these alcohol companies, and many club owners and members of the community who have been successful in getting sponsorship will disagree with me. But my understanding is that alcohol reps only sponsor people that they know with their marketing budgets. And those people that they know are people that are familiar and who they associate with, right? And so, again, we're talking at a high level. The systemics of this issue to me is that when that marketing was created for that martini or whatever it is that you're talking about, there was not a black person on that board. And so the vision of the company for who their perceived client is not a black person. And consequently, that comes down and trickles down throughout the organization to the reps who, no matter if you explain to them the power of the budget, and we've had these conversations, Orin, at venues, whether you show them the ROI or like you do a $60,000 bar at Cube or whatever the case may be, there is still a perception. And I saw an interview of yours where you talked about the difference between racism and prejudice, where the prejudice comes into play and then enacts itself as racism because they have the power to give out the money.
Listen, Ian, you're right. It's not going to be a quick thing. It'll never be a quick thing. What it has to be is this. If I'm looking at 5 different event producers on the screen right now, and if this is in normal times and everybody on this screen, these 5 event producers, they, between them, do 30 to 40 events a year. And if they have control of their events and they're paying rentals to the venues, and those 5 event producers say, listen, we want to get together and we want to reach out to brands, whether it be liquor brands or anything else. and we want to say we're looking for some sponsorship. If you come together with your 30 to 40 events based on 500 to 1,000 people, you're going to be doing 15,000 people. People drink. That's it. And the worst case scenario, your crowd drinks $20 a head. 15,000 people, $20 a head. You have $300,000 that you can deliver to anyone you choose.
Okay. Okay.
That's what
And
it is.
that's a great solution. So what you're saying is basically a co-op or a collective.
You have to work together. You have to understand your numbers. You have to work together. And if you do that, I'm just talking about the people on this screen right now. If you do that, it becomes more powerful. And even if nobody wants to give you anything, if you just all say, no problem, nobody's giving us anything this year, but this year, we are all going to insist that brand this is no longer available at our parties.
Mm-hmm.
That brand is going to notice. The brand is going to know. And it doesn't matter who's in their boardroom because their numbers are going to tell them that there's a problem. They know who's drinking their product. They just know it doesn't matter because you have no power to work together to do anything to stop them from doing what they want you to do.
Okay. Okay. And Trevor, sorry. You had wanted to speak. I'm sorry. I know you're having some technical difficulties.
I'm good, Ian.
Sorry, I think a poll just popped up in the middle of the screen. Okay, so I guess we want to get to closing questions because I think we're at 2:18. So I want to throw to each one of you and ask you, what is the most urgent thing that you feel needs to be addressed with respect to Black event producers, agents, festival professionals, anti-Black racism in the entertainment industry? I'll start with Polly.
I'd say education. Education is always a big piece. You know, a number of us on the panel talked about not even knowing about some of these grants, not even knowing about some of these monies and resources that are available, you know, not even knowing how to, you know, write a sponsorship proposal or do something like that. I think that's huge. And I think once you figure out, and I'm just picking one thing, once you figure out that this stuff is available, knowing your numbers and knowing your worth, that is a big thing. You know, I started that maybe into my 4th year, and it was actually a venue owner that said to me, no, Polly, Black people drink a lot. They just show up late. They're drinking between 1 and 2. If you guys started at 10, like everyone else, it'd be golden. So it's just knowing your numbers, understanding your brand, having that education, knowing where to go to get these things. And once, because personally, I have never applied for any type of sponsorship. A couple of times they want to throw you some bottles. I'm like, that's not what I was thinking. But just when I get to the point that I apply and they say no, then I can fight because I applied, right? So for me, that's important.
So what would you want to see from these organizations and these companies that are claiming to be allies? What is it solution wise in terms of education that you'd like them to do? Do you want them to put on workshops? Like, what is it that you would like them to do?
I'm not necessarily looking for the education. So, well, yes, education from them, putting it out there, right? So when we talk about doing the work, you know, if you are, I'll give you an example, the mayor, and you're having a talk and you're inviting a bunch of people, did you do the work to see if these are the right people that you invited in the room, or did you just check a box off? You know, we talk about that, right? Mm-hmm. So doing the work to get that information out there to the right people in the right communities, accountability, right? You say you're my ally, you say you want to make a change, so you have to take that extra step to make sure that you have the right people in the room. And someone said, if you don't know who that person is, ask.
So I'm going to intervene there for a second. I heard a quote, and the quote said, sometimes the violence is silence. I don't know how many of you guys have experienced this. Trevor fell off the call. How many of you guys have experienced this? But I've found that As I said, like sometimes the the violence is silence. You reach out to these places, you tell them who you are, you tell them what you do. If you happen to catch them on the phone, they'll tell you to send them a deck, and then they will never respond to you again. I guess Orin is probably the most experienced in this space. How do you overcome that if you're not a big venue? Like I produce, I mean, you know what I mean? It's not about me, but you produce a certain amount of events per year and you are a legitimate producer of events, but you cannot get a call back from XYZ.
So, you know, and I think I think that it's a misconception. Like, you know, I've got promoters that I work with who, Chinese promoters, Serbian promoters, Greek promoters, none of them are getting sponsorship from liquor companies.
Okay.
So I don't want you to believe that everybody's just rolling in sponsorship dollars. Most liquor companies don't give anybody sponsorship. Most liquor is sold at the LCBO, not in the nightclubs, none of the venues. There is marketing budget and there's budget that they put towards venues, but that budget is solely because of it's a lifestyle. They want to associate themselves with some venues. I don't get the same dollars as, you know, McFadden's pub down the block because those brands want to associate with what I'm putting out as opposed to what they're putting out. So I think the money that you see going out there tends to be from brands who have found or feel that it makes more sense to associate themselves with particular people, particular events, particular artists, because that is a lifestyle or a brand that they want to promote.
And I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that you said that because I heard a quote, I think it was D.L. Hughley, and he said, the most dangerous place that a Black person can live is in the imagination of white people. And what I understood that to mean is that, again, as you said, they want to be associated with a certain type of lifestyle or whatever this case is. But Black people understand celebration in every lifestyle. We understand how to drink wine at weddings. We understand how to drink champagne on New Year's Eve and everything. And like, I'm going on record as saying this, and you may disagree, but everything that everybody has learned about celebration and how and what they do when they pop a bottle in the club, this lifestyle that we're speaking about was created by Black culture. And consequently, it's interesting to me that they have a mandate and a certain type of lifestyle that they are trying to associate with. What it is to me, right? And again, plain talk, bad manners, is that they like the culture, but they don't like the people. And when you say that they want to associate with festivals and people who do a certain number of events per year, et cetera, there are people who are doing niche parties, right? And festivals and whatever the case is, like Redemption, right? But that does not fit their mandate because it is a reggae festival. And so it is a systemic barrier, in my opinion, when they say, if you're not doing this, or if your thing is not national, and the goalpost keeps moving all the time. I've had liquor reps take me to your club on the top of my condo, Bisha, and wine and dine me, and the thing keeps moving. I'm like, how about you give me no money and we show you the ROI? And they still don't want to do it. So it's questionable to me because I've seen them use their marketing budgets and all of a sudden they know how to do it when they want to. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion, Orin.
No, and listen, I'm not arguing with you. I don't work for a liquor company.
No, I know. I'm not arguing with you either.
But what I'm telling you is this is how you know, to throw it way back. And you know, it's you know, at some point when they were telling Black people to sit on the back of the bus, and what they decided to do is just not to ride the bus, eventually they changed it. Because you took your dollars away from them. It's as simple as that. And so Redemption is a brand, and he does well from his brand, and that brand does well. And if he is in a place where he's doing 10 parties, 20 parties, plus he's got a festival and this and that, he's doing all of those events. All he has to do is decide who he wants to exclude.
Yep.
Until they respect your dollar, it does not matter. Unfortunately, there have been many times in history that we can look at, culture, lifestyle, where people have said things to insult the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cristal, the guy who was doing Cristal insulted and said they didn't actually make this for these people.
Mm-hmm. Tommy Hilfiger.
And we kept on drinking it. Tommy Hilfiger, we kept on wearing it. And so if that's going to happen, why should he be apologetic? Why should he care? That's the reality. So in the end, all I'm saying to you is that the only way that any change happens in the space, and mind you, once again, I'm saying to you that most promoters do not get money. But if you want to put people in a place where they say, hey, our numbers are being affected, if the Black community is known for drinking apple juice, and apple juice is their drink of preference when they go out, and all of you start saying, we're going to rent your venue, but we do not want you to serve apple juice. By God, somebody's going to drive a truck up to your house and dump some apples on your lawn. But if you don't want to do it, if you want to keep on drinking the apple juice, don't expect me to change what I'm doing. It's working.
So,
it's working.
I understand your point, and I'm going to ask you, if a small promoter has the ability to stranglehold their way with one of your large venues and say that we are not, when you have an exclusivity agreement with that venue, do you think that we can tell you not to serve H?
If I have 3 different brands of juice, I have apple juice, orange juice, and cranberry juice, and you say, hey, I'd rather you didn't serve apple juice, serve cranberry juice, all 3 of those juices are my partners. It makes no difference to me.
Perfect.
Because I'm selling all that juice for $5. And if you can't buy the apple juice, then you're gonna buy the peach juice. It'll be the same $5. It makes no difference to me. Now, that might not be the case with everybody, but what I'm saying to you is that most businesses, most venues have partners with multiple different juice companies.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make a difference what juice you're drinking. You're going to pay the same $8.50 for that juice.
Perfect. Okay. And so Black event producers out there who are watching, contact me this week. We are going to start working on a collective, a co-op, if you please. Thank you, Orin. Okay, we're going to go to the Q&A. Click, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Oh, sorry, Beni.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Click.
One thing, I guess it kind of goes with one of the questions that are here. So I'm just going to kind of go off of some of these questions because what I have in mind kind of fits some of these. So one of the first questions here is, how do we encourage successful people to reach out to their communities beyond their own clique? So, and this where I wanted to get kind of, if you guys, not everybody has to answer this. So we just go to whoever wants to jump in. How do we encourage organizations and other companies? What are the things that you would say? What recommendations do you have that would encourage them to hire Black folks? Or where, if they don't know where to go, how do you encourage that?
I'm just gonna jump in. I would just say do the opposite of what you usually do, because I feel like there's a system that works for white people or others, sorry, and they just keep going with the same system. So it's kind of like, get uncomfortable. Like I said before, reach out to the people you've never reached out before, and if you don't know, ask somebody else. And if you feel uncomfortable doing that, then you might be racist, so you might not have to be in that role. And I feel like it's really just kind of, yeah, just doing what you don't usually do, because they're so comfortable in the system that only serves them and the privileged and not everybody else. So that one token intern or that one token Black person, like, talk to that person. They probably know more than you, not you, but know more than you think. So just having that person and giving them the power to make changes, to hire people, to recommend people, to make suggestions. And I don't know about clique. Like, I know Toronto is known as cliquey, but I think it's just small. And I feel like it just is a circle because that's who you know, that's who you know, and it's fast access. So I think it's also everyone just arising, and also as Black people, we have to know our own power as well. Like our parties, our events, they always sell out. It's not like we don't have an audience. We have the biggest audience. So knowing our power and taking ourselves seriously will rise up and not make it so cliquey. So I'm not too sure if I agree with it being cliquey. It's just kind of both parts reaching out and getting out of your comfort zone, because then you're not gonna get anywhere.
I think the great word to use there is comfortable and uncomfortable. You know, many organizations, if you don't have a Black person within your organization right now, it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to know that, oh, this is something's wrong. And you might not feel comfortable reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, we're trying to change things up. But you know what? That's where you got to start. I got hit up yesterday or like a week ago regarding one of the organizations saying, hey, we need more Black representation on our board. We want more Black representation on our board. Can you please reach out to other people who might want to step up and be on our board? And I think as ourselves, we also have to take responsibility in terms of answering those calls and actually forwarding it on to other people in our community for those opportunities that we think can rise to the right occasion.
Being okay with passing on the opportunity. Like sometimes I don't always want to be the only Black girl on the panel. Like I'm gonna pass it on to the next Black girl because I want her to speak. So it's like passing on and continuing the cycle and opening it up over and over again. And then it'll be less cliquey because now I've given my opportunity to the next person. There's gonna be more opportunities for me. Just now the next person.
So I want to intervene, and I don't want to contradict you, Click, but I want to say that oftentimes these places, these organizations, these companies, Trevor is lost in here somewhere.
Yeah, it's weird.
That these people know only certain Black people, and those are the Black people that they go to all the time, right? And again, as I reiterated in episode 2, yourself and myself are palatable Black people. We're light-skinned, we speak nicely, we're friendly, right? and so oftentimes there are others who don't get the same opportunities. And I want to go to Rebecca Don's question. She's an amazing young promoter in the city. And she asked, well, how would you recommend that an event producer go about requesting sponsorship, I believe she means, from organizations outside of grant fundings? She's sick of being told about bottles as funding. Is there a way? So now what she's specifically asking is, and Orin has said time and time again that promoters are not getting, but in the event that you want to pitch to these places, number one, how do you get access to the information on distributors and those things? I know it's research, but it's very difficult. It's like hidden secrets. And number two, how do you go about writing a professional deck or whatever that may be to garner the attention of these sponsors, not just alcohol companies, but sponsors in general, if anybody else has any information.
Well, I mean, I think that the most important thing is to know your timelines. Big companies put budgets out a year in advance. Poly, for instance. I mean, I've looked and I've seen some of the events that you guys have been doing, and you're right. It's very trendy right now to be, a Black woman in the LGBT community, et cetera, et cetera. So the money is there. And you should look for that money because there's people who want to give you that money, but you have to ask for it a year in advance. You have to ask for it way in advance. And I've had people, when Pride comes up, we always have liquor companies reach out to us and say, hey, we're looking to do something. Do you have anybody who's doing an event? It'll always happen because it's a last minute knee-jerk reaction. As you said, it's somebody wanting to do something. So for the event organizer, when people are talking about just giving you bottles, this is what I would suggest to you. This is the easiest way to start. If you have a liquor rep who's saying to you, well, we want to give you 4 bottles, then what you want to do is that you want to go to the company or the club and you can say, well, this apple juice company is willing to give me 4 bottles. You sell the 4 bottles at $250 each. Will you give me $1,000 towards my rental? You can do that. I would say no. I'm giving you advice, so
Yeah,
I don't want Ian to call me next week and tell me any nonsense.
Oh, because I have a case at Cube.
but then what the real thing is not on what I'm going to sell it for. It's what it would cost me. And so if that apple juice costs me $10 and they're willing to give you $4, then I might say, yes, I'll take $40 off your rental. That's the way to start. That's the place to start. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's what it would actually cost me to buy that apple juice that I'm getting. And so that's all I would say to you, is that as simple as that, yes, they just want to give you 5 bottles. They want to give you whatever they want to give you. Take that to the place that you're going to be working with and say, will you take this in lieu of rent? Will you take some money off my rent, whatever it may be?
Another question I'd like to go to real quick is, which we haven't really talked a lot about, but it's a great question, is Black music is being as popular, with Black music being as popular as it is, why isn't touring Black music sustainable in Canada? Country and rock acts can tour and make a whole career without crossing the border. I don't know how much true that is, but especially with COVID, how do we build the infrastructure to do this? The area of touring in this country for Black artists, and especially different types, especially with hip hop and R&B, is obviously being a challenge in this country. I would just love to hear you guys' input and thoughts and solutions, what you think needs to be put in place. Anyone want to jump in?
I think,
Oh, go ahead.
honestly, man, it goes back to that initial question about, fighting anti-Black racism in the whole country. It's like, it's representation. If you don't have people on your staff that are Black, that know what someone like ourselves, like who are event producers, who maybe used to be artists, what we go through and what to look for, you have no idea what, a room could expect. So how a Sunday at 3 p.m. would actually enjoy spoken word poetry or R&B music, but if you never performed as an R&B singer or gone to one of those events, you have no idea that's even a market. So when you don't have representation on your staff, on your team, making decisions, there's no possible way to even look at that industry or look at that specific avatar. Okay, this is a demographic that we can get at because people appreciate this stuff. So I think when you're talking about the whole country, we say that you got Toronto, you got Montreal, you got Winnipeg, and you look at Calgary, maybe Edmonton and Vancouver, and then everything in between is like, I don't know what's there, because you don't even know if there's a Black person there. Obviously there is, but it's one of those things like if there's more representation, it's going to be easier for artists or events of larger size to exist in those areas, in those markets. But when there isn't representation there, people don't even realize that those things can be a possibility.
Yeah, I wanted to add into what you said. Basically, when you're planning a show or a tour, you're looking at the market. You're looking at who's going to come to the show, who's going to be in the audience. And I feel like exactly what he said, he took the words out of my mouth. We don't know the hip hop acts or the other acts in other provinces. And I feel like that's also due to lack of exposure. We don't have hip hop radio stations. We don't have hip hop publications in other provinces. I'm not too sure, but see, that's a problem. I'm not too sure. So the fact is, we don't know if hip hop is even being exposed in these provinces or even being given a chance or anything like that. So how are we supposed to even market to provinces where we don't even give the exposure to? So I feel like there's all these little steps, and we just expect Toronto to be the hub of everywhere when there's Black people in all these provinces, or not even just Black people, just people who enjoy Black music and Black artists, and they're not getting shows, radio stations, blog posts, anything. So then there's no market for us to even do a tour or a concert. So there's several steps before even getting
back to something. I have to give a shout to Phil Fazell in the comment section from Word Magazine. He actually threw something out, and I'd love to hear what everybody else here thinks of the idea of there being some sort of Black event producer coalition. I almost feel like that's something that we've never really had in the country, is somewhat of a Chitlin circuit created, where there's some, where we know in each city there's this individual that we can go to, and that all these organizers work together to actually buy talent, create the tour, create something, and take it across the country. The jazz festivals do quite well at doing this. Why don't we have this? I'm just throwing it out there.
Is Phil gonna lead it?
I don't know.
It's a great idea.
Maybe I will.
He'll lead it all.
Maybe I will.
I agree.
You know what? Respectfully to Kinetic, he has tried to do that in the market before. We have some internal conversations that are not for this panel. But I want to just, as we're getting close to the end, I just want to run some quick questions, some Q&A for you guys. Data collection, on Black spending. Do you guys think that could assist in changing the paradigm in terms of what, is presently the way that things are done in advertising and sponsorship dollars straight across the industry?
Most definitely, because it's all about the dollar. It really is at the end of the day. It's like Orin said, and I use that example a lot. The Montgomery boycott, no one cared until they realized how much the bus companies were losing, right? So I think that I know that if we have those numbers and we have that database, not only for our own events, it would be very, very powerful. And honestly, I think they already know. They just know that we don't know.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to leave you guys with one or two final questions. I'm going to throw it at each one of you, and I want you to answer this question. What things could be done that would make a substantial difference for you as a Black entertainment professional? Diana?
Sorry, you said what things could be done that could?
Yeah, by the industry that could would make a substantial difference to you as a Black entertainment producer. Like, what are the things that you want changed? Basically, I said it in a roundabout way.
That's okay. What do I want changed? The change has to come from within. So I would just want to speak to continuing to take up space wherever I am, in whatever company that I connect with, just because I feel it's very small, and without our voices being heard, and again, just taking accountability for the change that we want to see.
Sorry, I should have been more clear. The changes that you cannot control. The changes that are controlled by other people other than yourself.
Wow, I cannot change the color of my skin. So I would say, I'm optimistic. I will always love a challenge and fight for that. I definitely can't control how other people see me, judge me. And that's a tough question.
Yeah. Okay. Yvette, what would you like to see? What changes would you like to see in the entertainment industry? We've talked about representation. We've talked about access to education. What would you like to see?
I would like to see expansion of, basically, I feel like all the time we know the problems and then it stops at the problems. But I feel like I don't want to say penalized, but I feel like those people who police Black people, who don't let us in their venues, who don't give us money, I feel like they should be, like I said, not called out, but they should be able to face some type of consequence for even doing that, because we call them out and then they still have their job. They're still in their position. They're still in their roles. And then we're still conformed into one accountability. Exactly. Tal said it in the thing. They need to be accountable for every single thing they've done, because the more of them, the less of the allies, right? So we need more allies to be able to have that spot, because the roles right now are being taken by people who don't appreciate those spots. Like last time we talked about the media, why is that writer still writing about people when he just wrote about Houdini the way he did? Like, why are these people still in these roles? They should be out of these roles or replaced. So we need more allies and less of the people who are just lazy with it and just don't even have to be held accountable, because they just get swept out under the rug. And then the people who are complaining just kind of look like, oh, they're complaining again, and we're just the whistleblowers, and then that's it. And then it's on to the next.
So in solution to that, Orin has made a very, very powerful point, and this is why young people for war and older people for, I'm not calling you old, Orin, older people for guidance, because he has alluded not eluded, he has said in so many words that it's the power of the black dollar. And so the one thing that we actually really didn't get to is something that Click has been pushing for the entire span of this thing, which is ownership. You know, how do we move, and we have an entire episode on succession, but how do we move Orin from operations manager to owner? How do we move Yvette from associate agent to owner? How do we move, Trevor has already made the move to ownership. He's owned numerous clubs in Ottawa. Maybe Trevor, you want to touch that?
Can you hear me now, Ian? I'm back in.
Perfect.
So yeah, basically, again, we talked about this before, but once we get into that position, we have to do our job and get others to come up behind us. Find the excellent workers that are doing the same things that we are doing and bring them up so they could be the future owners and take on more. And I just think we need more people in position that are in that position to make those decisions and bring other people in.
Okay. Yeah. Polly, what would you like to see? What suggestions do you have that would make a difference for you as a Black entertainment professional? Oh, you have already answered this. I'm sorry.
I did want to touch on what Trevor said about ownership. I thought about that a little bit before we even got on the call, where I've contemplated, you know, owning spaces many times, and it has to be your dream. Like, owning a space is a lot of work. Never mind the money to get it open, because we might be able to get it open and get those funds to get started, but there is so much that goes behind it. You know, and I've spoken to venue owners. I did, you know, my research when I thought I wanted to go down that road. And if your venue is not popping Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it is very difficult to pay those bills and sustain that. You know, never mind an accident happen at your venue, you know, and it's over. You know, so not everybody wants to own. A lot of times we say, oh, we should own, they should own, and why don't they own, and why don't you do it? It's a lot, and not everybody wants to take that on. That's my number one point. You know, back to what Orin said, having people, Black people in those organizations, Black people that are allies and that can hire and bring up the next generation is something I want to see. And allies that open their mouth at these organizations. So when you see something, do something. If you don't see diversity around you, talk about it and make sure the next time that you're hiring, you hire the right person, but you give diversity a chance. That's what I want these organizations to do. And I am going to make these places accountable. That's one of the big things I got out of all this, the movement that's happening is, okay, Apple wrote a good note. My company wrote a good note. Now let me see what you're gonna do. I'm gonna make you accountable. I'm not gonna forget about this 2 months down the line when I walk into your store and I don't see anybody that looks like me. You will be getting a letter and you might get a petition, right? So that's what I wanna see.
Okay. Beni, what would you like to see that could make a substantial difference for you as a Black entertainment professional? And what assistance could you find helpful in that regard?
I missed most of the stuff because there was a fire alarm in my building, so I missed basically everybody's thing. But I do know what I was talking about earlier is just exactly that. It's just representation for me, and I think what everyone just kind of alluded to is just making sure that you do your part. So if you're in that room, if you're on that staff, if you're a part of that organization, ask those difficult questions like, how come there's no Black people here? How come our whole team is white or our whole team is Asian or whatever? And especially if you're in the space of reggae music or hip hop music or R&B music, and you look around and nobody looks like the people you promote on Instagram, nobody looks like the people that the music videos that you play or the music that you are looking for, you should change that. And you can change that. And it's very, very accessible by going into those communities, by understanding we're in the age of information. So you can use Google and you can literally just be like, who is doing events in the city, or taking it back to the streets of original promotion, going hand to hand, talking to people, going to basketball courts, going to basketball games, going to baseball games, going to soccer games, just meet people and be like, hey, who's doing this? How can I meet them? Do you have their contact info? Super simple.
Okay. Okay, so we have reached, oh, sorry, Click, go ahead.
I know you're going to say we reached the end. I wanted to just add one thing with Advance being a partner, supporting partner in what we've done with this roundtable discussions. For all of you who aren't aware of what Advance is, it is a Black music professional collective organization. And I think that to add to what we've been talking about here, I actually see opportunity. I actually see there is not one Black-owned booking agency. Why isn't there one? I think that there's an opportunity there. I think there's an opportunity for more and more Black promoters to align to actually build tours across this country. I think that there's opportunity here. I think that for opportunity to happen, there needs to be this conversation piece. I think there needs to be awareness of what the holes are and how do we need to fill them. And I think that that can only be done by groups of organizations coming together to bring us together to actually align to build that I guess highway. You know, if you're not part of the solution, you're the problem of the solution. And so I think that we need to, if you're not signing up to become a member, you need to become a member of Advance and make your voice heard. And if there's not something that you're seeing there being done, then create it. That's basically my 2 cents.
And I will be speaking to Advance about creation. I think we are at the end of this conversation. Is there anything that we're leaving out that anybody thinks here needs to be addressed? If not, I want to take a moment for Jacob Blake, the young man who was murdered by police in the States.
He's not murdered. He's still alive.
Oh, he's still alive. I'm sorry.
He's paralyzed.
Yes, he's paralyzed. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. See, you know, the normalcy of this and the outcome is so normalized in our minds that it's just what I said. You know? But thank you all very much. We will be back next week, Tuesday, 1 p.m. or potentially another time. And actually, if you can leave us comments, email me. I've left my stuff in the email us comments and your thoughts on the time. And I want to say thank you to all of you, Polly, to Yvette, Diana Webley, Trevor, Beni, and of course, Mr. Orin Bristol. Thank you guys so much for your contributions. Your suggestions will be compiled in the Breaking Down Racial Barriers report that we will be making, and it will be disseminated to CIMA's partners. I want to say thank you to CIMA, our event facilitator, and to our sponsors for this episode, Canadian Music Week, Breakout West, the Canadian, the East Coast Music Association, and the Canadian Live Music Association. Thank you. This has been Breaking Down Racial Barriers. We will see you next Tuesday at 1 p.m. as we, what's episode 5, Click?
Yes, episode 5, we're addressing the creative space, ad agencies, and just how we exist in that space, you know, and how creatives, be it directors, video directors, music supervisors, who all deal with music work in that space. So excited for that conversation. But thank you everybody for your time today. It meant the world. And,
log on to somebody has a loud car in the background, www.bdrb.ca. All past episodes are up there. This one will be posted by tomorrow. And again, thank you all for your contributions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day, guys.
All right. All the best.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye, everyone.